from the worlds of the Genesis of Androzani Advent Calendar. The December Dump.
Alright. Okay, so Adam, I have a very important question for you. Why does Spider-Man hate driving with his evil twin?
Because it causes a dilemma?
No, it's because he's a bad parallel parker.
For God's sake. So that we're kicking things off with the parallel parking joke? That was good, to be fair. I don't know why I didn't think of that. A higher mind probably would have sussed that out. But see, because you said twin, my mind's thinking, oh, it's going to be a twin dilemma joke. But you got me. You got me.
Yes, it's pretty funny. Anyway, hello and welcome to the next of the quote-unquote worst of Classic Who series. I say quote-unquote because I end up liking most of these stories. But this time we're going to be doing what on the 2014 DWM poll was voted the dead last Doctor Who story, below every other story from 1963 to 2013 or 14. That'll be the Twin Dilemma, the first story for the 6th Doctor, following after Caves of Androzani. Just a spoiler warning for anyone who hasn't seen the show, we sometimes discuss things about the show in these videos, so just bear that in mind. We pretty much have all the stuff sorted for our defense thing that we do at the end, so no need to leave comments anymore for that. We have our list on screen where we're almost near the end, because now we've just got 2 more Cullen stories, and then we got, I think it's 3 or 4 McCoys, and then eventually the very final finale will be the Dimensions in Time. Also, we have Patreon where you can get early access and exclusive access and full-length reactions and all that sort of stuff, so go check that out in the description. And I'll probably leave a link to Adam Martin's channel in the description as well, because you have a channel, and it's...
I do.
Cool. If you want to see...
Oh, cheers, man.
If you want to see reviews of, like, TV idents and now CDs, go ahead.
And to be honest, I couldn't sell it better than that, to be fair. It is what it is.
I recently went on Spotify, me and my friends, and we re-listened to a whole bunch of the New Zealand released NAL CDs, because we have our own range. And we were listening to some of the ones from the mid-2000s, and wow, it was a throwback.
That's the thing about now, is I think no matter what country they come out in, like, they are just time capsules of, like, when they came out. It's great.
Mm-hmm. And on every single one from that period of time, without failure, there was a Black Eyed Peas song on it.
That was like their peak, wasn't it? Like the mid to late
like,
2000s, especially when they had like Boom Boom Pow and stuff like that.
It was the albums Elefunk, then you had Monkey Business, and then you had the end and the beginning, and that was like the Fergie era of the Black Eyed Peas.
Yeah, I keep forgetting she's not part of it anymore, is she?
Yeah.
She left. Yeah.
She wasn't part of it at the start either.
No, way back in the... Was it the late 90s they started, I think?
Yeah, they did. And the first album she appeared on was Elefunk, which was 2003. Anyway, we've got very limited time for this video, so we better not waste time talking about NAL CDs. Anything else you want to like say before we crack into the Twin Dilemma?
Yeah, just I've sort of got a reputation over the last year amongst the Who community for being like the Twin Dilemma stan. And I just wanna clear the air a bit. Like I don't think this story is the worst Doctor Who story of all time, in my opinion. Like, you know, you just mentioned it comes to the bottom of, like, you know, the polls and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I personally don't think it deserves to be there, but that doesn't mean I don't think it's without flaws. I'm not saying the Twin Dilemma is a perfect story. I'm not saying it's my favorite story of all time. It has problems, but I've always been of the belief, ever since I first watched it, about 10 years ago, I've always believed it's not as bad as it's made out to be. But again, that's just my view. But I just thought I'd put that at the beginning, because some people might come to this thinking, oh, Adam's gonna, you know, say it's the best story of all time and da.
Yes.
No, I just think it's not that bad.
Yes, so... no, we know Adam Martin is not a supporter of domestic violence.
No, absolutely not. Like, I already did a chat about this is actually my second time defending the Twin Dilemma. I did a video with Davis. Who,
I remember.
You should check out his channel. Yeah,
I saw the thumbnail for that, but I couldn't watch the video because I've never seen the story before.
Well, there you go.
So
but
this is my first time ever watching it today.
Oh well, we're gonna this is going to be fun then. So I'm looking forward to it.
I have seen a couple of clips. Like, it's hard to avoid not seeing it.
Yeah.
Because if you go on any Sixth Doctor YouTube video, it's going to come up with Twin Dilemma clips in it.
Yeah, certain clips in particular, but we can discuss that when we get there.
Yes. Well, we'll have to see what happens to those alien spies. Right, are you ready to crack on with the Twin Dilemma?
I am indeed. I do love this title sequence, to be fair. So.
Oh, it's blinding, but it's great.
Yeah.
The only thing it is a bit weird.
Oh no, you go.
That Colin Baker smiles in it, considering how he's characterized in his first season. It's
almost like they didn't have a plan. So.
It almost makes it a bit uncanny valley.
Yeah. Anthony Stephen, I always forget he wrote this. It's not a name you hear pop up often in like Who discussion.
I don't think he. Well, the thing is, I don't think he ever did anything else in Doctor Who. So there you go.
Oh, bless him.
Yeah.
Now, right off the bat, these two, you might not warm to these two at all. I wouldn't blame you for that. No, I mean, they are, child actors. I think you've got to be lenient to an extent because, they're children. But also, I feel they're old enough to take, like, basic direction, and they're just not very good. Also, don't ask me, like, what game they're playing. I have no... It's like futuristic backgammon or something. They're also very snidey, if you haven't gathered already. So...
This reminds me a bit of the Holy Terror, actually.
Oh yeah, I suppose so.
Like,
yeah,
people being like very matter of fact about their family.
Yeah,
I can't believe
people actually seem to like that story. So.
I'm comparing the Twin Dilemma to the Holy Terror, but there you go.
Holy Terror. Yeah.
Maybe Rob Sheeran was inspired by this.
See, folks, there's parallels in everything. That's what they're playing. Equations, whatever. However you play that. Meanwhile, in the TARDIS.
Oh, here we go.
It's terrible.
Yes.
I can sense it in every fibre of my being.
Have you the faintest idea what you look like?
I mean, say what you want about this story. You've got to admit, Colin goes for it, like, right from the get-go.
Colin's great. I love him.
Yeah.
A noble brow. Clear gaze.
See, some people seem to have a problem with, like, the Sixth Doctor being very, like, I guess, egocentric in a way, but I think Colin pulls it off, like, brilliantly, and it's just different for the character, like, I don't know.
Feckless charm, which simply wasn't me.
What absolute rubbish! You are always...
Sweet! That says it all. Oh, this has been a timely change.
Do you think it's quite funny how the production team, like, Peter Davison's just left.
Yeah.
And some of the first few lines of this new Doctor is basically slagging off his immediate predecessor.
I think Perry's meant to be the POV character, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because she speaks very positive about the Fifth Doctor in this scene.
It's almost like a bit like Clara in the first bits of Deep Breath, how she speaks positively of Matt Smith's Doctor.
So clearly regeneration's going a bit haywire.
Just a little bit, yeah. But it's interesting. Like, I never got this argument that it's like a bad thing. Like, it's interesting to see something different with the regeneration, especially in classic Who, where for a lot of the time,
when you consider that, the actual manner in which Davison went to regenerate was very drastic. It was much more than previous incarnations.
Absolutely.
So it's this is like a consequence as a result of those actions.
Yeah. Get little references to past costumes. Bit of the fur coat. Well,
it is 82 after all.
Oh, well, yeah, there must be references. Colin looks so good in Velvet, though, I'm not going to lie.
I kind of wish he was in Velvet.
Yeah. Velvet just seems to be the one style that suits almost every Doctor, I think. Oh, here it is. Wait a few more seconds before you see the coat of many colours.
Did you ever play the Harry Potter games on like PS2?
I had the first two on PlayStation 1, mate. Harry Potter and Philosopher's Stone Chamber of Secrets, with those awful graphics. Yeah, the meme ones.
Like you would roam around the castle and you would talk to like random students, and they would respond to you. That's what these twins remind me of.
Yeah. Just the random NPCs. That's exactly what they're like.
The way they speak is like those children in Hogwarts.
I don't know. The saying things together does annoy me a little bit. I know it's like the whole twin thing, but I don't know. It just are they annoying you yet?
I've seen it so many times. I'm kind of used to it.
For a minute, that ring he has looked like the ring of of immortality from the Five Doctors.
Yeah.
And
Here we go.
Here he is.
Technical dream coat.
Yes. I mean, for all its tastefulness, he does pull it off.
Even though we know that Colin hates it.
Yes. See, she's holding on to that velvet. She's like, this is what you should wear. Does it imply the Doctor didn't change his shirt either? Still got the question marks.
I shall contact Mestor.
Oh my god.
Too late. He's got them.
What?
Yes.
Okay then.
Yes.
Charcoal creatures, I guess.
That's such an odd line. There will be hue and cry.
Just like she said to him.
Yeah. Slap right back. Don't you think as well, despite Perry, well, on TV anyway, hasn't been on the TARDIS that long, she's taking this all amazingly well.
Well, yeah. But then again, I guess Big Finish did retcon all that, didn't she? Didn't it?
Yes, with Eramemememem or whatever she's called.
I think the most frightening thing about this is it's written like Fourth Doctor dialogue, but the angle is different.
Yeah, and to be fair, Colin does this so well. But here we go. The most infamous moment is about to happen. Brace yourselves.
Alien spies.
Alien spies.
Now, of course, this is the moment that is like, the most remembered. Let's face it. When people say the Twin Dilemma, they think of this one scene. And I think everything up until he strangles her, I think is really interesting, like, character work for the Doctor.
Yeah.
Because up until this point on TV, we haven't seen, of the first 5 Doctors, we haven't seen a Doctor arguably go like this, I guess, brash, this mysterious, this offbeat. Maybe Hartnell at the very beginning, but not to this degree. And I find that so interesting. The whole he strangles her, I think, yes, that is a misstep. Like, I don't think he needed to do that. I think, there's probably many other things they could have done to show, I guess, how unpredictably it could be rather than that, if that makes sense.
It's played more like Perry's kind of his victim in a way. And it's a bit over the top.
Yes, yeah. And this is what I think the problem with the Twin Dilemma is on the whole. It's like it has a lot of interesting ideas, especially with, how unpredictable this new Doctor can be. But then it takes these ideas and goes to like the furthest extreme straight away, if that makes sense. Which then makes it, as you say, feel over the top. It doesn't make it feel earned. It makes it feel out of place. But the actual idea of making the Doctor unpredictable in that way, like making him very aloof with his companions, I think is a great idea in concept.
Oh, yeah.
Manic moments of no consequence. Oh, dear.
It's horrible.
Don't exaggerate.
Exaggerate?
Oh, what you say is impossible. I have an inbuilt resistance to any form of violence except self-defense.
Okay, that line's just a flat-out lie. Was it? I have an inbuilt resistance to any form of violence,
Regenerate yet unregenerate.
And that one line gave Big Finish a story title. So...
Titan 3 is where I shall rip.
He's so terrifying in this, but in the best way for the most part.
He's so entertaining.
Like
there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot they could do with this.
Yeah. And like you saying, if Perry's like the victim, like you got to give it to Nicola Bryant. That scene we just saw there, like she plays it so well. Like she genuinely seems, traumatized by what has just happened, as you rightly would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I just feel all that stuff there, like the Doctor feeling he's a peril, wanting to repent, become a hermit. This is a Time Lord sort of breaking down, like his regeneration's not going well. And that is, as we've said, that's a great idea. I just feel as soon as you have the strangling from earlier, it just removes a lot of that agency from the following scenes.
Yeah,
because
so
you'll always remember that.
It's a complex idea, but it's done in a very simple way, and it's too. This is an issue I have with Warriors of the Deep, is they make it too pitch black, and I think it's something that it's something that Eirich Sayward sometimes will do when he's not given the time to really flesh things out. Is he'll make things too dark, and sometimes it will work if it's the right scenario, but in something like this, it needs to be handled delicately. Yes, yeah. Like you say, the dark, like in stories like Resurrection of the Daleks or Attack of the Cybermen later, things like that. Yeah, I think in those cases, like, it can really work. But yeah, here, like, obviously there's room for darkness. There's an inherent darkness in what's going on with the Doctor, a regeneration that's failing. But as we said, it just gets pushed, like you say, too pitch black to the nth degree, and it just instead of being really coming across as like really serious and dramatic, in some moments it comes across as the complete opposite. I always love in this era of Who, like when you get officials like this on their costumes, like name badges and stuff are just clearly bits of plastic they've stuck together.
Craggy knob, which swims.
Oh God, I forgot that one. Thou craggy knob. Oh dear. I'm surprised that doesn't get more memes in the fandom, to be honest.
Where you and I can suffer together.
Why should I be made to suffer?
Yeah, quite.
The interesting thing about this is he only sees it as a mistake, as opposed to thinking, "Oh dear, I've hurt you."
Yeah,
you know? He sees it more as an error. It's like, "Oh, I've done something." I've made an incorrect answer.
Do you think that's partly due to maybe like the constraints of like the classic series format at this time? I feel like if this was, say, just because it's the most similar, say, when Capaldi took over, if he did the same thing to Clara, like you say, we probably get more of like an actual, relatable connection to it. Like you say about, "Oh, I've hurt you," rather than "I've just done something wrong." So do you think it's like a classic series thing that we don't get that?
Well, I think you could say that in New Who, it's more common for the character drama to be fleshed out this way. But I don't think in any era an audience would respond well to the strangling scene.
No. Oh, I'm not saying it should still be in there. I'm just saying if they'd have done it today, they probably would have been explored very differently.
Oh my goodness. Charcoal.
Oh yes, this is
cactus.
Yeah. This is Mestor. This is
sorry, not cactus, caterpillar, I should say. It's a charcoal caterpillar.
The giant slug. And Mestor is if I've got this right, I believe he's a gastropod. It's the fact his hands don't really move that far, so they just sort of shake in place. Also, do you think Sidney Newman would have absolutely hated this?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I can't tell if his antennae are meant to have eyes on the top. It's a bit hard to tell.
Not for faint-hearted girls.
That line would never fly these days.
Jeez.
1984, man. Very different times.
Yeah.
Dane Lovey's now trying to take the moral high ground after, It reminds me, in scenes where, like, a character says, "Oh, I've got an idea," and the other character goes, "No, that's stupid." And then 2 minutes later, that character goes, "Oh, I've got an idea," and it's the same idea.
A pitiful performance.
All these big words, man.
Alliteration.
Oh.
You destroyed my entire command. Now I'm going to kill you.
Oh, heck. So, that's the Twin Dilemma Part 1. What are we thinking?
Well,
there's still 3 parts to go, but
yeah.
Yeah. What are you getting so far? What, like, any initial thoughts?
It seems like, if I'm being honest, I think is with the Doctor stuff, it's just like it's a really interesting idea, but I don't know, it's kind of almost impossible to justify it, because it's like,
Right.
I get that it's post regenerative trauma, but it's
Yeah.
still very weird, because I feel like this should be a far bigger deal than they're making it out to me. Like, I know that Perry is bringing up, I'm traumatized because you tried to kill me, but I feel like it's not represented enough in her actions. It's only represented in her words.
I hear you, and again though, part of me feels like it's another classic Who thing, like a different example. You know, after Adric dies in Earthshock, in Time Flight Part 1, we literally have like a 1 minute scene in the TARDIS of like, oh yeah, can we change it? No, we can't. Oh, but we should move on. Okay, let's do that. And then it's barely ever mentioned again. And when you hear a lot of the behind the scenes, even like the production team are saying like, oh well, it was just a very different time and way of making the show we had to do. So I hear what you're saying about it's not shown enough.
It's interesting though,
and
because
I agree.
There's a lot of people that feel the opposite about New Who. I've heard a lot of people say they really don't like when things carry over. For example, when you think about after Doomsday, there's a lot of that, the end of that episode with Rose's departure hangs on the Doctor for a bit, and naturally that's the direction that Russell T was going with it, and in the sense that unlike Classic Who, he was actually, rather than just let's go to the next story, he would actually tie all that in and have it impact the Doctor across the next few episodes. And
absolutely.
There are some people that feel like that gets in the way of the show and would much prefer the way that Classic Who does it,
I guess it depends on what you prefer, like storytelling wise. If you prefer like a serialized nature where it is like one story and done, then the vast majority of the classic series will cater to that for you.
Yeah.
Because I guess I know you had the Key to Time in the 70s, but really they were still like their own individual stories with just that running theme. I guess I always consider like the Trial of a Time Lord to be like the first, like you say, attempt at like carrying things over. And I know they build it as one big story, but again, segments within. So yeah, I don't know. I don't mind either version of storytelling, but you're right. There are some people who vehemently prefer one over the other.
I don't think there's a magic answer one way or the other. I think it's more about, for me, it's more about what feels right for the characters, what's justified. And I think that I often come to the defense of the latter, because I do think that there's a very good reason for why the Doctor was affected by Rose's departure in that part of the story.
Yes.
And then in something like Time Flight, I do think that them just sort of moving on from Adric within 5 minutes is also very unjustified. And I'm not saying that you have to have that kind of drama in it, but the fact that the end of Earthshock is the way it is makes it unnatural when you don't do it.
Exactly.
To sort of round it back to what we're currently watching, it's like you can do this kind of drama, but you have to stick with it. You have to really, have the reactions and the actual aftershock of what happens in the story feel right, rather than just having Perry tell the Doctor that she's traumatized. I feel like in this scenario, if I was her, if I was vicariously thinking about being Perry, I would have ran away from the Doctor by this point. I would have found I would found any way possible to get out of the TARDIS and run away from him.
Yeah. I think again, like in terms of the interesting concepts, there are little hints of moments like with her actions. Like there's it's a really small thing. It's after he's strangled her and he gets back up and he's like, what's going on? And he comes towards her and she starts backing away again. And then there's a little bit where she almost holds up the mirror again, and he like comes really close. And again, it's not like perfect, but I just love the fact, again, if she'd have completely ignored the circumstance, she would have just stayed planted exactly where she is. Whereas when he approaches, she her instinctively wants to back away. So I think there's little hints of what you're saying, her showing how it's affected her. But you're right, it could have gone absolutely further than what it has.
Yeah.
So
it's it's a bit wonky. And in regards to the rest of it, a lot of it was just sort of set up. You had the thing with the twins, and they have that green circle on their arms, and they're somehow controlled by that old guy. And that old guy is in contact with the big slug thing.
The big yes, the big slug. Yeah.
And then you've got the slug things like left and right hand men, which are like the sort of charcoal creature things. And And then you've got those police people. And it was, and then they materialize on that planet with the burning thing, and then the guy is about to shoot the doctor. So it's just in terms of the rest of the story, it's all just setting up bits and pieces, and I don't really have much to say about the rest of it. It was just sort of there. Yeah,
no, that's fair. Shall we see how it goes in part 2? See how things progress.
I'm very interested to see where it goes from here, actually.
Do you know what? The author, Anthony Stevens, this sounds really rude, but I don't know if he's still around, but I'd love to have a chat with him about this story.
Who was that?
You know, the author, Anthony Stevens. I'd love to have a chat with him.
No, I don't think he is. I think this was one of the last things he did in his career.
Oh, so he was already like an older gent when he wrote this then?
Like he was already okay. I think he was in like, I don't know, like 50 years into his career when he wrote this. Something like that.
Oh, blimey. Right, okay. But again, with these scripts in the 80s, you wonder how much like was changed by Eric Saywood, the script editor.
See, it's weird because sometimes Eric Saywood can be great with drama.
Yeah.
Like, I think Earthshock's probably the prime example, or like Resurrection.
Yeah. And again, wonderful classic Who cliffhanger. You're about to kill the Doctor. You murdered my command. Perry diffuses the entire situation by going, "No, we didn't." And that's it. That's what you waited a whole day for. So, what do you think so far about the Sixth Doctor being very, egotistical, to say that? Like, what do you think of this characterization so far?
It's difficult because we don't really know the whole thing with post-regenerative trauma, especially at this point. It's so unfamiliar that I don't really know. I don't really know what is and what isn't, like, in line.
But see, that's what I kind of admire about this story. Like, yes, it is going to efforts to making the Doctor like an unlikable character. But I think
I will say
for an initial. So yeah, go on.
I will say one thing I really like is that some of his dialogue is very similar to previous Doctors. So it's still the same person. Like, in the strangling scene, he makes a reference to something and he says, "And do you know what they said?" And he talks about the history. That's something the Fourth Doctor would say, but he would do it in a mocking way, like it's like to laugh at, to be funny.
Absolutely.
Whereas in that scene, he was doing it as a suspicion of her.
Yeah. No, you're right. There are trimmings suggesting that, as you say, it is the same person. But I think for a first story, if you really want to make your Doctor like really unlikable, I think, again, done in the right way, you can absolutely get away with it. And again, outside of the strangling scene and some of the other bits that we'll see as we go on, I do like the characterization to begin with. But yes, I do not support domestic violence. Make no mistake.
No, of course. There's just not enough subtlety. It's just too black and white.
Yeah, it's on the nose.
If you look at something like I think for me personally, the best post-regeneration story is The Power of the Daleks, and the way that handles the Second Doctor is so well done. Because there's so much subtlety to it, and there's Ben and Polly's disagreements over whether or not he's still the Doctor and all that.
Yeah, and I love in Power as well. Just near the beginning when the Troughton Doctor refers to the Hartnell Doctor as if he's a completely separate person as well. Like, the Doctor liked to wear a ring, didn't he, or whatever he says. Like you say, it's that subtlety, that like mystique about it. Like he's almost like playing on their doubts. Like, oh, am I the same person? And I noticed it recently when I rewatched The Web of Fear. And they're like, oh, someone in our camp is like the traitor, and he's like, oh, it could be any one of us. And the Brigadier's like, oh, it could be you, and he's like, yes, could be. Do you know what I mean? It's that lovely like mysterious performance, and I think Colin does that throughout his entire run. Like there are moments where he's like that, and he can do it. I just think a lot of the time, the direction of what the scripts wanted to do, or like the direction they wanted to take his Doctor, just didn't necessarily match. You hear that? The slug has infinite ambition. Come on, children, act, act. I do feel for them to a degree, the kids. I really do, because it's not easy being a child actor. But I don't know, man. It's just
They had to find twin child actors as well. That's not easy.
Exactly, yeah.
No internal hemorrhage. This deep healing beam's a small marvel.
Love a good MacGuffin. Oh, a deep healing beam. Yeah, of course it is.
Detect their source, but it is there. I am never wrong. The life force itself is in danger of extinction. We must find this evil and destroy
I do
it.
like how confident he is right off the bat. Like, because I imagine for an actor, it's never easy to like step into this role. I think all the actors have said that as the years have gone on. But and especially for Colin at this point in the show's history, he's being given like the most out there script to like introduce his Doctor, and he's just running with it completely. So I do have a lot of respect for him for that.
Colin gives 110% on everything.
Oh yeah. And he does look good in that coat. I don't care what any of you say. He does. I feel at first Perry is almost, in some respects, is written like how we'd maybe see a modern series companion, if you get me. Like you said earlier, that whole, like, Perry's POV, like, you know, that's what we're seeing this new Doctor through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sort of feels like that.
See, in this whole scene, he's been written how you would think the Sixth Doctor would be written. It's just all of this stuff that happened in part 1 has almost been swept under the rug, and that's really the issue.
Yeah, I mean, if I like the whole like unregenerative sickness or whatever. Oh yeah, you get a little Tegan reference there, and you hear Tegan's theme.
Oh, they're playing the music from Resurrection as well. That's quite cool.
Yeah. See, I love that little moment because you can see in Colin's performance what that means to him as well. Like, it's just a little thing, but it's great. But what you were saying, yeah, the whole thing in part 1, yeah, a lot of it is like brushed aside. And if I'd have been in charge, I would have made it like run throughout this story's 4 parts. Like, still have, you know, whatever the adventure is or whatever's going on, but keep those elements within it. And in fact, without spoiling too much, it is there to a degree, but nowhere near as much as it was in part 1.
I will say one thing that has been a bit jarring so far. Apart from that one bit that I really liked where they referenced Resurrection, I do think the score for the story is a bit garish, and not in a good way.
Yes, yeah. There's a lot of use of what I like to call the ugly synth. Because synthesizers are great for sci-fi, but there are also a lot of
the
sounds.
Roger Lim's score in Caves of Androzani is absolutely perfect.
I can't fault it. Yeah.
A youth who bore mid snow and ice, a banner with
Here
a
he comes.
strange device. Excelsior!
Oh, Doctor, stop!
See, when Colin's being fun, he's great.
Yeah.
In my footsteps.
The paint chipping off.
Renew le deluge.
I wonder which quarry this is.
Have you ever watched Yu-Gi-Oh, Adam?
Mate, I am a big Yu-Gi-Oh fan. That was my jam.
Okay. Do you remember?
Yeah,
Do you remember the twins from Yu-Gi-Oh?
Oh,
Double Trouble.
Power and Docs.
Paradox, Para and Dox, yeah. These guys are twins, and they are wearing green and red attires, just like the Paradox brothers were.
Oh, mate, that's brought back a whole. And they tried something gate.
I kind of wish that
Guardian,
they were.
wasn't it?
I kind of wish they were the Paradox brothers instead, actually, because that'd be so
Could you
entertaining.
imagine if there a Doctor Who and Yu-Gi-Oh crossover? I am here for it. Let's do it.
The Sixth Doctor in his post-regeneration story meets the Paradox brothers.
Oh God. See, we should talk about Yu-Gi-Oh sometime. That'd be boss.
Oh yeah, I've heard of this scene.
All her fault. Oh, mercy. Don't shoot me. Don't shoot me.
But again, I kind of like it because it's showing this, you know, how his regeneration is still affecting him at the moment.
Yeah, the thing is also see, for example, like the Second Doctor would do a similar thing but very subtly. He would do a thing where he would pretend to be scared of someone, but he's actually not.
Yeah.
But they don't handle this with the same level of, texture. And I think that's kind of what's frustrating about it, is there's so much that they could do with this.
Do you feel it's that thing again of it's too on the nose?
Yeah, it's not subtle. It doesn't have nuance. And that's really the frustrating thing, is that I feel like Colin Baker could pull it off.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love how that's been a running motif for all these years, that he doesn't like being referred to as Doc. Although
that's something
that has been broken
in
in the Whittaker era, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. But yeah, that's been going back since like the Time Middler, I think. That's when Stephen called him Doc.
Oh god, there's tinfoil everywhere.
Relapse. I am now in total control. Leave everything to me.
See, again, like you say, it's a bit on the nose how he says, "Oh yeah, it was just a lapse. Don't worry, leave it to me." Again, subtly, you could do you could have dialogue that implies, is he in control? Make the audience still question it rather than him just saying, "Oh no, it's fine, don't worry."
Yeah, it's way too heavy-handed.
There was spying. Silence, wretch! I will not be.
Silence, wretch. The Doctor should say that way more often to villains.
I do love the Sixth Doctor's sass.
Yeah, he's got sass in buckets, man.
And your companion?
My disciple.
A pretty one.
I'm a Time Lord just as you are.
There you go, another Time Lord.
Ah.
That apparently regenerated twice, so apparently met the Fourth Doctor.
Yeah. Must be between that big gap between Deadly Assassin and Face of Evil.
Yeah.
Where everything happened.
Everything happened, yeah. I don't think Big Finish have done an Asmael story, not to my knowledge, unless I've missed a trick. What would your reaction be if you just woke up in this place?
I don't know. I don't know what I would do. Probably scream.
That's right, they left his water pistol on the console. No, don't show it in close-up. I mean, fair play to this guy for giving it the, the weight that it is an actual feasible weapon.
It hardly sounds in character.
You're wasting time.
Oh, what's time to us?
Wow, the irony of him saying that.
I know. That's the second time he's sort of alluded that, hasn't he? That, like, what is time to a Time Lord or whatever.
See, again, like, they could have done a thing where this guy here has, like, a similar thing going on to the Doctor, and they could do, like, a parallel. And that would tie into the whole thing of, the twin dilemma.
The twin dilemma. Yes. Again, like you say, missed opportunity there.
Maybe if Chris Bidney was still the script editor, that would have happened, because he's very good with themes.
He is, and I did always enjoy Chris Bidmead's scripts as well. I know he's like hit or miss, but I really enjoyed them. So, so this geezer decides he needs a new costume, and just you wait till you see what he went for.
If it's of any comfort, Doctor, I too remember that evening by the fountain.
See, why can't we see that story? I want to see this guy get drunk by a fountain with Tom Baker. Why can't we have that story? Big Finish, yeah?
Yeah. Wow.
Dear. Yep. Pick the most garish 80s thing possible.
Yeah, it's like they're in just John Nathan Turner's wardrobe,
Probably brought all his spare outfits. I must admit, I am partial to a good Hawaiian/floral shirt. I'm not going to lie.
I think it's all about the timing.
Oh, it wobbled. Oh, no. Oh, dear. You know how people always try, classic Who doesn't actually wobble? Well, sadly, on this occasion...
I loved how in the Horns of Nimon they did it on purpose. Like they actually wobbled the set on purpose to show a ship shaking. That was actually one of my favorites from this Worst of Classic Who series I'm doing. I loved Haunted Daimon. It was so much fun.
Well, that's it. It's not like it's just a fun story because it's batshit crazy. So.
Yeah.
And what's that villain's name? Is it Soldeed? If you just lean into it, if you don't think about it too hard, it's a great time. Some lovely model work here.
Oh, I love a good model shot.
It breaks down your molecular structure and puts it back together again. A most refreshing process. Until now, that's the only purpose it served.
Oh, bit like a regeneration.
Just a tiny bit. So.
Now, when I stand clear, press the internal button. Do hurry, Perry. In precisely 1 minute, I'm going to be blown to pieces.
Again, it's all I'm, isn't it?
Yeah. Especially ironic,
Which
given
again, yeah, go on.
Given his last lines from the Caves of Androsani.
Yes.
See,
but again, when you think
he's surprised that it worked. It's like, wow, he put her in danger.
Yeah. But again, I think for your first, I kind of like that sort of, he's willing to go to those, because again, it's something different. It's exactly like how I view, I mean, we've talked about this when we last chatted together, but like with Capaldi and Deep Breath, I just loved how they went to the lengths to make him really unpredictable for an audience. Like, yes, it might be a bit uneasy at first, but, you know, it can work.
She's not having a good day.
Oh. No, it's all going wrong, isn't it? So I don't know why they finished on that particular close-up, if I'm honest. But they had to end it somehow, I guess.
Yeah, see, okay, so the thing is that, like, that scene we were talking about, the way that you would think it would be played, if it was, you know, another Doctor or whatever, would be, oh, thank God it worked.
Yes.
As opposed to, oh my God, it worked.
But see, yeah, I get what you're saying. But again, considering this is the first story for a new Doctor, I'm sort of I'm open to that, seeing like a different side of this character's like wide persona. If he'd have still done it like, you know, halfway through his tenure, then I'd be a bit like, whoa, this seems a bit like left field. But I kind of don't mind it in this story. Like, it's a lot of those things, bar the strangling and stuff. Like, a lot of what people say are off-character moments, I do kind of enjoy, because, again, it is so different and interesting to explore these facets we don't normally see of this character in any of his regenerations, really. So that's why I like it, but I completely understand why it rubs a lot of people the wrong way.
I guess the common thing that we keep saying is that it's just too on the nose.
Yeah.
Like, it's lacking in texture and nuance, and there's so much on the table. And I think the reason why this story probably puts people off so much is because all they see is the very pitch black sort of, the Doctor is being an asshole for no reason. That's kind of what they see. And like, I do think there is context in there, but I don't. I just think it's less about there not being content, because I do think there is, but it's more about just creatively speaking. I just wish that they had gone in a more less flat direction. That makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. It's almost like
I do find it entertaining, but there's more for me. There's more to character drama than just am I having fun. Like, it's got to be yes. It's got to have, you know, that very sort of, there's reasons for why this is all happening, and there's when you're flipping between different moods on this post-generation story with all this, you know, chaos going on with his personality. If we were changing between him being very suspicious and very like sort of, oh, you could be an evil alien spy, but then also if we also showed the other side of, I'm worried about whether or not she's going to survive this trip. I think if you showed more dimension and you showed that he's bouncing between these extremes and have that play out more. I think there's a lot of the things that are dangerous, but there's also not enough of the things that I think give people hope to, see it through, if that makes sense. And
yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I do think, and I can't remember if I said this when we covered Series 8, but I do think Deep Breath, in many respects, embodies what the Twin Dilemma tried to do and does it a lot better or more successfully. In my opinion, in that sense of creating a Doctor who's a bit unpredictable, unlikable at first, does things that you wouldn't expect, but has also like a fair degree of the subtlety that the Twin Dilemma doesn't have. And also, like you say, more towards the end, I feel in Deep Breath there is like a hopeful air about it by the time the story ends. I do feel in many ways it's like that. Yeah.
Obviously we've still got 2 more parts, but if I were to give some 2 cents on comparing this and Deep Breath like you are doing, I think Deep Breath handles the Doctor better, but I think there, I would say I have, as we discussed in that video, I have issues with the way Clara's character shifts suddenly from Time of the Doctor to Deep Breath, and I think Perry, even though some of it's a bit like weird how she just suddenly she isn't worried enough. Like I did mention that before, but I think that Perry is a lot more in character and is a lot more, I feel like, a lot better used than I think Clara was in Deep Breath. But that's mainly just because I feel like the direction they went in with Clara was very sudden and very opposite to what she was in Series 7, and it's very jarring.
Sure, and I think that's also down to the fact that, I think as we mentioned, in Series 7, Clara had this whole storyline weighed on top of her, the Impossible Girl thing, and then it's like, oh, she's staying on, we need to do something else, like you say, so there is that big shift, whereas with Perry, and a lot of the classic companions, no disrespect to them, but they were, mainly just there as a companion, as someone for the Doctor to talk to. They didn't really have, in the 5th Doctor's time, Perry didn't have an arc really placed on her like as Clara did. So I think maybe that's why, like you say, and you're right, I think that's why it helps sort of smooth the transition of her character to this new Doctor. But yeah, in terms of like reaction, like I said earlier, there's those lovely like little moments in the TARDIS. But yeah, it could have been a lot. There could be even more of that, and it could have just gone a lot further. But alas, here we are. But
it's interesting. But it's interesting how there's actually very little plot, I've noticed.
Yeah.
Like it's very focused around the Doctor and Perry, which I'm not necessarily against, but I'm very surprised at how little is being developed with everything else going on. That's kind of the thing that's really surprised me, but that might change in the second half anyway.
Yeah, it does. I mean, obviously I won't spoil it, but the plot obviously does develop, but in a way, like with the concepts that we've talked about that this story is trying to go for, I almost wouldn't have minded if we'd had another sort of, maybe like another Castrovalva situation, how the first 2 episodes are primarily in the TARDIS, or I'm not saying in the TARDIS, but if the first half or even the whole story had mainly been focused around the Doctor and Perry and them sort of working each other out in this new, this new persona, I think that could have worked a lot better, at least in the first half, than also trying to, shoehorn the plot in. Because I don't know about you, but for me as a viewer, the most interesting part about these first 2 episodes is the Doctor and Perry and how they get on around each other now that everything's changed. And when we cut to the plot, not that it's not interesting, but it's far less interesting than what, you know what I mean? Every time we cut from the TARDIS, I'm like,
I'm not saying that the plot. I'm not saying the plot isn't good. I'm just saying that there isn't enough of it. It's weirdly underdeveloped.
It's cookie cutter. It's cookie cutter thin. It's almost like they said, or whoever was in charge was like, right, we've got the Doctor and Perry stuff. Oh, but we need an adventure alongside it. Here's a very paint by numbers adventure. And again, Anthony Stevens, the writer, like you say, was an older guy who was well into his career. I guess I don't know off the top of my head how much Eric Saywood, tailored his scripts in the editing process or anything. But yeah, the plot at this stage is just sort of there, like you say. The main interest is the Doctor and Perry, really.
Yeah, I would say that going into part 3, I would like to see more of the plot, I guess, is kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's like, okay, they're in this place, like, so why are they, like, what's going on? Like, why are these kids important? Why? I know they've sort of said, oh, they're mathematical geniuses and stuff, but yeah, we need more of
There's
what this is all about.
There's a very small amount being given. Like there is that Time Lord character that they introduced. That was probably the most interesting thing about the plot so far.
Yeah, he is probably as well. Again, without spoiling anything, he is probably the most interesting of the characters in this story that aren't the Doctor and Perry. Really, just an addendum. I also do, for those who don't know my channel, I do a viewing figure series, like a documentary style, where I look at how the show did. The Twin Dilemma did all right, you know. It was, I think its average was about 7.1 million.
Well, when you consider the story that came before it, that's usually how ratings works, right? It's like the rating of the story is usually determined by either the quality of the story that came before or like the episodes building up to it. Because like for example, like Dalek Invasion of Earth. Was really popular, and so the Rescue and the Romans got really good viewership because of Dalek Invasion of Earth.
They did. Yeah. And it's the change wasn't that big between I think Androzani averaged out at about 7.3 million, so there was only a 0.2 drop. But yeah, you're right. The one that springs to mind is after Earthshock, which was at like just under 10 million. The first episode of Time Flight got over 10 million. But then it dropped because, as we all know with Time Flight, those who probably stuck on for Eirich were probably disappointed that it was all brushed away in about 5 minutes. So
it'll be interesting when you get to Series 8 in your viewing figure series, because everyone's always like, viewership went down with Capaldi, but actually Series 8 had very high viewership when you look at it overall.
It did. Off the top of my head, from what I remember, I think the Series 8 viewership was almost as high as Series 7 at the time, when you consolidated all the catch-up and stuff.
Yeah.
It was really with Series 9 where things started to dip a bit.
Stupid girls watch.
But see, again, I like this idea of like the Doctor almost having to relearn his compassion in a way. I think you can have again, only maybe for the opening story, you can have a story where it appears that the Doctor is lacking in compassion, like he's not a perfect character. I believe you can show that as a flaw, but yeah, so I'm open to it, really. Some people say, oh, he's got no compassion, it's not the Doctor. It's like, yeah, but it's all that thing, he's just regenerated and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I like it.
I guess the thing that I would say is that I wish they hinted more at his compassion potential. And then they slowly drip fed it in, and then he became more like that, if that makes sense. It's sort of like seed little moments where you can see where the character will go eventually.
Yeah,
I think that would have worked better. They're playing the Doctor Who theme.
They are. I wondered if you'd pick it up. Yeah. Again, though, on a very unappealing synth sound. They do that a few times in the classic series. Everyone kicked off in The Timeless Children, when the theme plays when she breaks the Matrix. And I'm like, Classic Who did this a fair amount of times.
They did it in Woman Who Fell to Earth when she stands up in the train.
Oh, yes, that she does. And that's that.
Oh, is that like a gecko statue?
Yeah. Well, you've got the chief here or whatever with the white trimmings.
That's quite powerful.
Yeah.
Very powerful slug we have here.
Yeah. I think the character of Mestor is set up pretty decently, like as you're saying, in terms of like his power and what he can do, like the power he's exerting over this land. I think people sadly just see the costume and go, oh, a giant slug. So
I love his flamboyance.
Yeah, the way he swans about is brilliant. See, at the moment, his Doctor now seems a bit more like, simmered down and settled. Whereas, again, I just wish that unpredictable, unstable, unbalanced nature was sort of just running throughout this story completely, and then sort of he settles down by the end.
It's like you can have like, it's not that, because this here is really good Sixth Doctor stuff, but it's just like you've forgotten about all the other stuff you're doing, you know? It's like he's bouncing between them.
That's it. If this was like any other story, this would be, it'd work great. But because we've just seen in parts 1 and 2 like what he's going through, and now it's almost like that's not a problem. It's funny as well because have you seen Attack of the Cybermen? Is that on your list? You have seen it.
I've already seen it. Yeah.
You know, they make that reference early on where Perry's like, "Oh well, you've only just regenerated," and then the Doctor's like, "Oh no, I'm fully stable. Don't worry, I won't hurt you." All that stuff. That almost felt to me like a quick, okay, we've had that now. Let's forget about that and move on. Because like, whilst the Doctor and Perry bicker for a lot of season 22, he is very like, I guess, what we know as the Sixth Doctor, if that makes sense. Like, there's no trace of or acknowledgement really of that.
You say that, but in Attack of the Cybermen, he does murder a policeman, doesn't he?
Yeah. Well, oh yes, that is true. That is true. He does do, I guess, unpredictable things. Oh, I suppose so.
And then
but yeah, I've always felt that line.
And then he chloroforms Shocker in the Two Doctors.
Okay, yeah, I stand corrected, but I feel that's more like.
Yeah.
I mean that. Yeah, I don't know. I always felt that line in Attack of the Cybermen was like a very quick. The twin dilemma happened. Now let's forget about it. Do you know what I mean? It was just sort of like, because obviously people would be asking after a 9-month gap, but yeah, it just feels like they write it off from there.
See, this thing of Perry battling back with him like this would be so great if they didn't do the strangle scene.
Yeah.
Because then it would make so much sense that she is still competitive with him about his, his decisions and
exactly
the things he's saying. And if she wasn't traumatized, then this would work so much better.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a lot of... Again, that strangle scene has a lot of problems. And again, I wonder if that was something Anthony Stevens had written in, or if that was a Saywardism that got placed in later.
Like,
but I'd be very interested to find out.
If you just get rid of that strangle scene, all of this works so much better.
Like, you could have even everything up to, before he strangles her, or like, the Perry of Persian mythology and all that sort of stuff. Like, that works great. It's just...
It's something that has a ripple effect on the rest of the story. It's a bit like, I've always said this about, in the End of Time, at the very start, when the Master gets resurrected by magic. It's like...
Yes.
The rest of the story is impacted by that scene, and because that scene happens at the very start, unfortunately, everything that happens after it now has to live with the fact that that scene happened. And it's like... That's the annoying thing, is when you do something like that at the start of the story, everything after it will be affected. And it's the same thing with the strangle.
Yeah. And it's like they say in soap operas, like they say the most sensationalist element is the one thing audiences will always remember. And that definitely happened with the Twin Dilemma. Like I said near the start, you say, oh, the Twin Dilemma, they go, oh, the one where the Doctor strangles Perry.
It's not just the Twin Dilemma, it's a lot of Doctor Who. I've noticed people remember the sensationalist elements more than the nuances.
Yeah. Which makes sense in concept. Obviously the sensationalist elements are there to like grab your attention, but I think it can either be done really well, or in this case it like just worked in a negative effect, because I know people who won't watch or aren't willing to give the Twin Dilemma a full chance watching it in full, just because they go, oh yeah, but that's the bad one that everyone talks about where he strangles. Do you know what I mean? It's that ripple effect then.
Yeah.
Ever since you said the whole Yu-Gi-Oh! Paradox thing, I can't stop seeing it.
I know. It's crazy. There has to be a correlation.
I'm waiting for one of them to slap out Gate Guardian, man.
Absolutely. Oh, these are the Egyptian paintings of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. We're gonna see.
We're just looking for every Yu-Gi-Oh! parallel.
We're gonna see Blackluster Soldier on the wall soon.
Yes. The Sun God, also known as the Winged Dragon of Ra. So, yeah.
Do you think maybe Kazuki Takahashi was a Whovian?
Oh yeah, I bet. Do you know what? I bet the Twin Dilemma is his favorite story. So...
Yeah, that's why the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga is so violent.
It is violent. I remember reading it after seeing the anime, which of course here is like very censored. but I was only like 10 or 11, and I was like, gee, this manga's really violent.
Well, yeah, because the Japanese anime is a watered-down version of the manga, and then the US anime is a watered-down version of the Japanese anime.
Absolutely.
So the version
like,
that we get is like 2 watered downs of the manga.
Super PG. So...
Yeah.
I do feel for this lieutenant guy, you know, now that he has to take himself seriously whilst wearing that.
Can he, like, slide out of his shoes?
I think it's implying that it's so strong he can't, but... I know what you mean, though. When you look at it, you would just be like, yeah, slide your shoe off. So you know how in part 2 the doctor said, oh, it's Asmael, the master of Gioconda? Is that implying then that Time Lords can just go out and command other worlds and that's completely okay?
That's a good question.
Unless he's a renegade, but we haven't specifically been told that.
What? Oh, yes. And then they will have the same atmospheres and climates.
Now, this is interesting.
Yeah. So there is a plot.
Yeah, now we're getting somewhere with the plot now.
Private doorway to the back of his laboratory. That's where he's bound to be.
Who?
I like this because the 5th Doctor never knew where he was going.
Nope. It's like that confidence, that bombast has returned, like that Tom Baker had.
Fend for yourselves. Don't waste your breath. We'll manage.
See, again, I really like that scene in concept again. How the Doctor is,
I do too.
You know, is capable of just going off.
I really
I
do
think...
like that scene in concept a lot.
Yeah.
I like
and
a
I
lot
just
of this
love
in
that
concept,
Perry
actually.
fight. I like that Perry fights him back. Like, I love that she just goes off at him as well. Like, so many classic companions just would have, like, taken that on the chin.
Well, absolutely. She's meant to be the point of view, really.
Absolutely.
Still bullying children, eh?
Oh, here we go.
That's like
it's this moment.
Oh, you've seen this moment, have you? There he goes! Here we go! Again, another attempted...
However, I still would like to know why you tried to
See, there you
murder
go.
us.
Another moment of, I guess, spiraling from the last scene where the Doctor's regeneration isn't yet stable. And should it maybe have been another attempted strangling? Probably not. But I do like the idea that he is willing to, like, go off at this guy in a moment of, like, instability.
Yeah, you think maybe if it was more like he approaches him violently but then doesn't touch him and he just puts his hands down and then apologizes? Wouldn't that be...
Yeah.
Like it's like, because they say, like, the actual... I think I was watching the special features, I think maybe even for Caves, where they say that the real scary stuff is what you don't see. It's the potential for it to happen. And I think if they had done that here, where it's the potential for him to strangle someone as opposed to actually strangling them, would be so much more effective.
Yeah, and I think that works for Perry as well. Yeah, that would have worked for the scene in the TARDIS too.
Doomsday. One tiny
No,
error in
that's
your
a 10th
calculation,
Doctor
you'll-
story. Haha.
Must die.
See, now he's worried about it.
Yeah, see, but that's what I mean. Like you said at the end of the last episode, you know, you want to see more of that. I guess, like, you know, the compassionate element come through, and it's starting there. And I think that those last few scenes, you know, where he goes off at her and they have that argument to the whole thing with Asmael, it's like, yeah, now after he apologizes, you're really starting to see that this is the same, you know, person we've been watching. Really, he's just taking some time to, like, I guess, find himself again. So. Yeah. The cliffhanger, you could argue, is a bit awkward. The fact Colin Baker almost looks straight down to camera and just goes, Perry! But that's, you know, it's hardly his fault.
It's the whole on-the-nose execution of the story as a whole is kind of what's really letting it down. Is that's the unfortunate thing, is that there's so much potential for a great story in here with the Doctor. And like I said, it should be executed more like the potential for bad things as opposed to just flat out it happening.
Yeah. No, that's my main gripe with it as well. But I mean, on the whole, as I say, I do find this story entertaining to watch, and it has a lot of good ideas.
Of course, anytime Colin's on screen is very entertaining.
Absolutely.
And in this part 3, we actually did get some stuff with the plot, like explaining about how the Time Lord wants to rearrange the planet so that the atmosphere works better, so the supplies are, work better.
Yeah.
That's actually a really interesting concept, and I like that he said that, I need the twins to make it happen. That's quite a cool idea.
Yeah, and it actually gives weight to the twin dilemma thing, which I was thinking, I guess obviously it's referring to the twins themselves, but do you think it's also a reference to the dilemma that the Doctor and Perry are facing with the Doctor's regeneration? Do you know what I mean? It's like there's two separate... I don't know, I could be reading into that, but I guess there's many different ways you could take the title.
Yeah, it's just... It's like I've been saying so far, great ideas, it's just the execution's a bit off, it's too on the nose.
Yeah. So how do you think then in the last... How do you think it's all going to wrap up in the last 25 minutes? You got any predictions?
No idea. I mean, I will admit, it's like, pacing-wise, it is quite a sloppy story, isn't it? Like, it's a bit all over the place. But I have no idea how it's going to resolve, to be honest. I know what the very last line is. I have seen that scene. But
oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, no idea. I have no idea where it's going to go.
Oh, well. Let's find out, shall we? I love how the title sequence is ever so slightly, bar obviously Colin being in it, like it's changed ever so slightly from the Davison one. Like, how they've got the extra like blue around the sides and the top.
Well, they basically just did the Davison one, but on crack.
I mean, yeah. It's more. I find it's more interesting though. Like the Peter Davison one's good, but it is very just we're like. It's a spacescape and nothing much else. But yeah, I like this.
Why don't you kill her?
I find her pleasing.
Oh, God. No. Pleasing. and so continues the long trend of all the villains finding Perry insanely attractive.
Yeah. No one did
that
it better
happened
than
a
Shara's
lot,
Jet,
didn't it?
though.
Oh no, yeah, Shara's Jet was like the peak, and it actually felt justified with Shara's Jet.
I do think Syl is a great villain as well.
But I think, he's great in the sense that he doesn't necessarily like how... He actually hates how Perry looks, and it's just an interesting difference from that. But who else? Shockeye and the two Doctors, the Borad in Time Lash.
I think Shockeye just wants to eat Perry, probably.
I mean, but yeah. That counts, right? That counts as a form of affection. But then there's the Borad in Time... Perry gets the worst treatment in Time Lash. I don't know if that's
I haven't seen
coming up
Time
on
Lash yet. That's next on the list.
Oh, I mean, it's not... Well, yeah. She just gets the worst treatment of any story ever. It goes beyond sort of chuckling and going, oh, Perry's getting treated badly again, to being like, okay, this is a bit... Like, someone's got a vendetta here.
I mean, the twins may have the mathematical skill, but I have the empirical knowledge.
See, and this makes sense because we saw him do it in The Creature from the Pit.
We did?
And we see him do it again in Journey's End.
I do wonder at the time, though, if Anthony Stevens or Eric Saywood just wrote that in without thinking of The Creature from the Pit. Yeah. But you are right. You are correct.
It is established, so it's okay.
It is. John Nathan Turner might have reminded them, because I think he was on the production for Creature in the Pit, I think. So
yeah. Ian Levine too. He was part of the season.
Oh, that's
as a continuity advisor.
Yeah. Oh, he's been embolized.
See, this slug is very powerful, like I said.
Oh, sorry, he's not been embolized. He's just been severely wounded, I guess.
Yeah, Sutek who?
Mestor or Sutek? Who?
Sutek is very Yu-Gi-Oh, isn't he?
Yeah, yes, Egyptian, man. Telling you, there's references everywhere. The Key to Time, the Millennium Puzzle.
Exactly. Except the difference is Doctor Who portrays the Key to Time as being pointless and is actually, anyone having that much power would actually not be a good thing. Whereas Yu-Gi-Oh portrays it as the one true king returns from thousands of years. Yeah. And it's his destiny.
Oh my god. Take a drink every time the word destiny is used in Yu-Gi-Oh! You'll die. So, is that what embolism is? I actually didn't know. Like putting bubbles in the... Oh, that's quite horrific when you think about it.
Yeah, that is.
See, that's a nice bit of subtlety, though. You know, the villain didn't just explain what embolism is. It took a line from the Doctor to, like, hint at it. I quite like that.
And it's very scientific.
He is also egocentric, willful, and...
Mestor's just summed up the last 3 episodes in one line. Can you tell how the costume's a bit impractical by the fact that Mestor doesn't really move?
Yeah. But, you know, Jabba the Hutt was like that in Return of the Jedi.
He was. Inspiration, question mark?
You see, each planet will occupy the same space, but
Oh.
will be one Dracondan day ahead of the other.
Yeah. It's a
That
clever
is
concept,
quite
isn't
cool.
it? Yeah. Yeah. So what are you thinking so far then, now that they've rooted out the flaw in this
I
plan?
wanted there to be a plot, and now there's a plot, and I'm happy about that.
Yep. Good.
And it's quite cool.
It's a bit disappointing how they can just enter the TARDIS by...
Yeah.
Well, Mestor did something to it. But again, I guess it shows his power, that he can just do that.
I mean, maybe this Time Lord told him how to do it.
Possibly, yeah.
Worries me.
That's a pose and a half, isn't it?
I sense the answer is in there. Asmil?
There's a lot of sensing in this story, isn't there?
A lot of what?
Sensing. He said earlier he sensed there's a danger in the universe, and now he
Yeah.
senses the answers in there.
This set looks like where the Cryons are in Attack of the Cybermen.
It does. And do you know what? Because it's the BBC, it was probably reused. Yeah. I always find that a fun game with Classic Who, like when you see a bit of set or
Yeah.
a bit of costume and you go,
They
oh,
do-
that was
you know
from
what?
X.
You know what? They do it in New Who as well.
Oh, yes.
There is
Yeah,
a
some-
specific set they use in Series 6, and you can see it in, I think it's the Rebel Flesh two-parter and Night Terrors. There's a room
okay.
that is exactly the same in both stories.
Well, and they came like not long after the other, so that's pretty daring of them.
There's also another one where it's the ship in Mordrin Undead is used for Gallifrey in the Five Doctors.
Oh yeah. And a lot of stuff in well, obviously the Time Lord outfits for one got reused several times.
Bit of a twist, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, like you said, I kind of like how they address its simplicity though. Like, you know, it's so simple, it's mind-boggling. Like, it's a very simple plan, but it's one that could feasibly work.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like about Mestor as a villain so far is, as it's saying, he's already gained sort of the control over a Time Lord who, especially in Classic, who are built up to be these like almost, you know, invincible beings. I think, like we've said, it really shows how much of a formidable villain this guy is.
Oh, very like reverse score.
Yeah, Control Alt Delete. And then Mestor's like, I made a backup file. Ha 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 ha. Or something like that. Do you think like the whole Mestor costume sort of ruins the impact of it a bit, or?
I guess so. I don't know.
Such a nice girl. If I see her again.
I'm sure you will.
Oh god.
Must not be harmed.
And the others?
Kill them.
I feel like the charcoal on these costumes kind of represents the issue with the story is there's not enough to mention.
Sure.
Like, there's not enough to mention in those costumes, and there's not enough to mention in this story.
Yeah.
It's all to pitch.
I've been looking for you.
Yes.
I've worked out what you're up to.
Not subtle whatsoever. I clearly have one arm behind my back, but
Watch it, Mestor!
Please, Doctor.
like you're saying about the Doctor's violent streak, he was prepared to kill Mestor then.
And in so doing, I will crave your indulgence and forgiveness.
Not quite.
See, this is great.
Yeah. I think the Sixth Doctor on the whole is really great when confronting like villains like this.
All eyes need.
He's weakening. He's trying to control too much. All your conduct is affected by his thoughts.
Oh, see? He has limits.
Yes.
That's what I've been wanting. I've been like, if he's limitless, then we've got problems, but...
Yeah.
He has his limits.
He does. Oh, look at that. You get some decomposing.
Oh! This is quite cool, actually. Being able to see a Time Lord die on screen.
Yeah, like properly.
That's never happened in the show before, is it?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Yeah. Like, died permanently, obviously, because, you could say...
Yeah,
the Master has done that before, but they always come back.
I think you'll like this scene. It's quite nice.
To throw away your own life.
Nearly at an end anyway.
Oh, you had so much to give.
Oh, he's seeing what he did in the last story as well.
Yes, yeah.
He's seeing reflection of himself from Caves of Androzani, It's that self-sacrifice.
One of the best, my friend, was that time by the fountain.
I reckon this is the best scene in the story.
Yeah. No, it's just a really nice one.
I shall miss you, old friend.
I like this too because it just shows that Time Lords can die.
Yeah, it's again purveying this thing in Classic Who where they were made to be like the most, invincible creatures in the universe, and yet they do die. And it's just nice. There's so much else going on in this story that's quite loud and fast paced or whatever, and I just love they took the time, right at the very end, just Colin and this other actor just playing out this scene, and it's really nice. Like they both do a great job.
Yeah. I think you were right in saying that Time Lord was definitely the best character outside of the Sixth Doctor and Perry.
Yeah. There was probably the most going on with him, And again, I liked how when he said to the Doctor, "Oh, you couldn't have done it. You were too unstable." That's just a nice... Because he's probably right, It would have been interesting had the Doctor done it to see how he would have coped. But I just like how he ties it in with what we've seen. It's just a really nice little reference.
They've already started mopping up.
I'd rather stay. I think I could be some use here.
See, some people would try and criticize this, but this is very in character. This is something that previous Doctors would have absolutely done.
Yeah, absolutely. The first two Doctors in particular had a particular penchant for just like causing havoc and then literally leaving and not have saying, "Oh, we can't stay." So,
Future Doctors do it as well.
Yeah.
In Smile, for example, the Doctor leaves those people to sort it out for themselves.
Yeah. Again, I think why people critique it is, again, because it's this story. Do you know what I mean? Because the Twin Dilemma has such, this reputation.
I'm therefore bound to have different values and customs.
A fair point.
Yeah, but his former self was very human.
Yeah.
I am the Doctor, whether you like it or not.
What a way to end the season.
Do you know what? I think that I admire how bold they were having that as the last line. Like, fair. Do you know what I mean? Fair play. Like, it's
I can see why the general
statement
public
to
were
make.
very like, ugh.
Yeah. In that sense, it is almost saying it to the public as well as Perry when it's that, again, on the nose. It's like, yeah, I'm the guy in charge whether you like it or not. And maybe had it not been the end of a season with then a 9-month gap, maybe it could have been like rectified or got the audience like more back on side, if it was the start of a new season. But a lot of people did say that after the sort of 9-month gap, even though part 1 of Attack of the Cybermen did really well in the ratings, partly because I think Curiosity, the Cybermen coming back, lots of people then dropped off. And I think it is, I mean, it's just a theory, but I think it is partly that thing of people didn't like this new Doctor in the Twin Dilemma and then had to wait 9 months to see him again, to which if he hadn't changed that much they would no longer be interested, sort of thing. The Twin Dilemma, on the whole, I'm curious to hear your thoughts now you've seen it, but I'll just say, again, I found that a very entertaining watch. I had a lot of fun with it. I loved the little trimmings of what was teased to us as a concept, the Doctor being unstable, the plot line, Mestor and how powerful his species is. That final scene with Asmael as well, really nice, lovely scene. There's a lot of good in the Twin Dilemma, in my opinion, basically. There's a lot to like about it. I just think it still gets overshadowed by that one strangling scene at the beginning, and it sort of clouds everything else. But I will call out Matt Moir, who is a big Seventh Doctor fan, I believe, especially if I think season 26, the final classic season. And I will say to him, Matt, if you're listening, I would rather watch the Twin Dilemma than Battlefield.
Oh, big hot take.
And actually, on a particular day, maybe not every time, but I would also probably watch it over Ghostlight as well.
Very big hot takes here.
Yeah, Matt, if you're listening, I'm sorry, man. That's just how it is. But and you don't like the Twin Dilemma either. What's wrong with? Well, come on, man. I'm joking. The thing is, though, like, I do understand why people don't like it. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying like, oh, how can you not like this story? I do understand. Like, there is, whereas there is a lot to like, there is also a lot that can turn people off.
When you look at it on the surface, you have a very violent Doctor. Not a lot of nuance there. Then you've got, cheap costumes, cheap sets, and cheap music. I can see why people were turned off, especially as a finale, and also taking into consideration coming off the caves of Androzani as well. That's a big thing. But I think I think this story had a lot of potential. I think there is a lot of positives within it. I think Colin Baker's performance is one of the strengths. And that whole Time Lord character that he was with is one of my favorite things about it. The whole concept about bringing the planets together to, create a better atmosphere so you can, have it be more sustainable. But then the Doctor figuring out actually that's impossible because the gravity would cause them to fly into the sun rapidly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, him realizing the error of his ways and sacrificing his life at the end. I thought that was really well done. And there is some good bits with Perry too. I just think a lot of the rest of it's a bit discombobulated. I think a lot of the other characters, like, as much as I like the Slug, I think there's more you could have done. And then also everyone else is, like, the twins and all of the charcoal people and the police people, they're just so... It's very sloppy. Like, it's just all over the place. And in terms of as a post-regeneration story, yes, great ideas, but the execution is on the nose, and I think if they played it a bit more tension-filled and with more subtlety, it would have worked better.
That's fair. Well, on the whole, because I know you've been sort of doing this as you've been going through Classic Who, would you consider the Twin Dilemma a dud?
I'm on the edge.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say it's definitely not the worst one in this marathon, but I think that's a really good question. I don't know, because I think it's less of a dud and it's more of a missed opportunity. It's more of a frustration.
Sure.
It's more of a you could have done this a lot better.
Yeah, and like you said, there's enough in there that you still like sort of enjoyed, like when the plot got going, some of the Perry moments, and when the last scene as well. Yeah. So would you be like, because again, in all the mainly the Doctor Who magazine polls is what I go off, but the most recent one, like you said, 2014. I think the last few, the Twin Dilemma has always come last. From what you've seen of Doctor Who as a whole, classic and modern, would you place Twin Dilemma at the bottom?
No. Definitely not.
Okay.
Especially if you include the new series, because I'm not as lenient on New Who as Classic Who.
Okay.
If we're talking Classic Who, it's probably bottom 5 or bottom 10 from what I've seen.
Okay. Yeah. I'm curious. What's the very bottom for you then? I'm curious. So far, anyway.
At the moment, it's the Invasion of Time.
No.
It used to be. It used to be Warriors of the Deep, but then I rewatched that, and I think I slightly prefer Warriors over Invasion of Time now.
Oh man, that makes me so sad. I love the Invasion.
I know you do. I think it's Invasion of Time at the bottom, then Time Flight, then then Warriors of the Deep. Then after that is probably the King's Demons.
Yes, I'd agree with you there.
And then I think after that you get to where around about where the Twin Dilemma would go. So I think it's like the Twin Dilemma and like the Smugglers and the Mythmakers and the Android Invasion are sort of around that.
Yeah,
that
that's
bit
fair.
after the King's Demon. So yeah, I wouldn't say the Twin Dilemma's a dud, but I would say it's on the edge. It's almost a dud, like very close to being one.
That's fair. Well, just the fact, because I knew you've been doing like, you've been checking what's a dud, so the fact it isn't makes me very happy.
I think in my head, it was until that final scene with that Time Lord dying. I think that's what really saved it for me. Was that climax?
Okay.
Yeah. If that scene hadn't been in it and it wasn't as good as it was, I would have considered it a dud, but I wouldn't have considered it like one of the absolute worst. I would have said it's just sort of below average, you know.
Sure, for real, yeah.
But that scene for me has really redeemed the story to a certain level. But I wouldn't.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, because so many people don't get that far again. Because obviously I know it's right at the very end of the story, but because of the like mainly the strangling scene, people either watch part 1 and go, "Oh, I don't want to watch the rest," or they don't even watch part 1. They say, "Oh, I just don't want to watch that story full stop." And that's any listeners, that's your prerogative, absolutely. But my mantra with any Doctor Who has always been, give it at least one chance. You know, that's always been my sort of mantra with it.
Yeah.
Because there were stories when I was growing up, like when I was like 9 or 10 getting into Classic Who. As, you know, when you get into like fan communities and stuff, there's always stories like the Twin Dilemma or others that the wider fandom is like, you know, that's the bad one. That's the one you shouldn't like. You know, that's the worst of the worst. And for me, I remember like in the late 2000s, the McCoy era was like hated by the, you know, like by the wider fandom. Everyone's like, oh no, that's the worst. That's what killed the show, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I know it's changed now, but I remember watching a lot of those McCoy stories as like a young lad, and I loved them. I thought they were great, and I couldn't understand, because before I went into it, my mind was like, oh, you know, this is the bad one, and it's just not the case. It's subjective, you know.
The first 2 Classic Who DVDs I ever bought were the Time Meddler and Revelation of the Daleks, and this was back in 2008 or 2009. And this was back when all I heard was, you know, whenever I went on YouTube in like 2008, every Doctor ranking had Colin Baker and William Hartnell at the bottom. Every single one. And so when I went to the shop, I don't know why, but for some reason I thought I'll get a William Hartnell story and I'll get a Colin Baker story.
Yeah.
And I was interested because I was like, oh, people say these are the worst ones, right? I don't know why I did this, but for some reason it just felt right. There was just something, I just looked at the shelf and I thought, I'll get these 2.
Yeah.
I watched them, and they are 2 of my absolute favourite Doctor Who stories to this day.
Yes, I'm glad you said that. I love Revelation.
I love Revelation. In fact, I think in terms of TV, like obviously Big Finish will change that with the 6th Doctor, but in terms of TV, I'm pretty sure they still stand as my favourite stories from those respective Doctors. So I think it's something special just happened on that day. I just chose those 2.
Revelation's incredible.
Revelation is phenomenal, and I have really loved the Time Meddler. I have such a soft spot for that story. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But the thing about them that surprised me the most was that I heard so many bad things about the 1st and 6th Doctors. And I loved them as a kid watching those stories. I loved the 1st and 6th Doctors watching those stories. Because I think
that just goes to show, doesn't it? Like, no matter what anyone says, the story that the fandom considers to be like the worst thing ever will be someone's favourite or one they really enjoy.
That's true. Because you know, I heard people say that the 1st and 6th Doctors were like quite harsh and quite mean. And within the first scenes they have in both those stories, they have quite brash moments. But I watched them in context of the story, and it all fit. Like with the 1st Doctor, it's the scene with Stephen where he's being very rude to him because he's just joined on the TARDIS and he's talking about the TARDIS controls and whatnot. But I love that. I love the way he's dismissive of Stephen and the way Vicky is the person between them. And then with the 6th Doctor, it was his attitude towards Perry when they're climbing that wall or whatever. And and that kind of banter. It's a lot, to me, it comes across more like brother-sisterly at that point, rather than the very terrifying thing that it is at the start of the Twin Dilemma.
Yeah, I think where a lot of that comes in, like you say about the first and sixth Doctors, is I think there are some out there, and it's completely valid if people think this, but like there are some out there who think if the Doctor is in any way, like you say, brash or harsh or unapproachable, that is like an instantly bad thing, and it means they're not the Doctor, it's not in character.
Yep.
But
And
I love those moments. I'm not saying it should be all the time, but those moments when we get them, if they're done well, like in Revelation, like in the Time Meddler, or later down the line, like I believe in Series 8 as a whole, as we discussed, like I think when it's done well, it can work. I do understand it's not as accessible, but I almost think that's the point. It's not meant to be as comfy as, say, like
and this
a
is
Tennant or a
that,
Smith is.
Well, you say Tennant, but actually I've noticed on Twitter a lot of people now are having this kind of take with Tennant, where they see his egotistical side and they get rubbed the wrong way by it. But actually, it's when you really look deep into the context of the character, there's a lot more to it than just being egotistical. There's reasons for why he's like that, and it's a lot more complex than just being egotistical. And it's like you said with Capaldi, it's like people are turned off because he's quite rude and he's quite standoffish, but there's more to it than just that. And like with Colin, it's like you can see the potential of in the Twin Dilemma of where they were trying to go, but if it just needs to be executed with a bit more finesse for it to really work. Yeah.
And I still maintain, I know like it's not the sole reason, I still maintain part of that, I think, is the whole, like, the format and structure of classic Who, and that the way they told stories back then, it was a very different, like, I believe if you made the Twin Dilemma today, like, same script, same story, I'd like to think a lot of that nuance we were saying we wanted would have been there. I'd like to think. So I'm not saying it's the sole reason, but I do think it's partly a reason. But yeah, there was definitely room for more nuance. But on the whole, like, the reason why I enjoy it is just because it's a fun story. It delivers these ideas, which in the context as if you were watching this for the first time in 1984, again, like I think I said when we did Series 8, Doctor Who hadn't really done this before. You know, present a really, like, Peter Davison had his moments at the beginning, but he wasn't as like unpredictable, or as, do you know what I mean? The Doctor hadn't really been like this to this degree before, and not all of it worked, but I'd like to think if I was watching in 1984 as a fan, I would have found it really interesting, though, the fact they were trying this new direction.
Yeah. I think also it's possible that there would have been a lot of people at that point that were really invested in the Fifth Doctor, and because it's such a jarring shift, they would have been shocked by it. But that's probably the point, isn't it?
And I think, well, yeah, and again, it's so funny, but I do think, like, the start of Colin and Peter Capaldi's eras have a lot of similarities when you look down on it, because I remember when Capaldi got announced, and even when he took over, I'm not saying all the fandom did this, but those who were maybe more of the casual viewer, who were used to, for want of a better word, you know, like younger Doctors who I guess were more attractive to a younger demographic. I'm not, not saying it's everyone, but I do remember seeing people saying, oh, well, I'm not going to watch it because, well, one, he's rude, but also he's an older guy. And I think that's a pretty shallow reason, personally, but
absolutely.
I saw it happen. And, back in the day, Colin Baker was a fair bit older than Peter Davison, and the viewership did go up when he took over. When Peter took over, so
it's also like that works both ways as well. It's like people say, I only want to watch David Tennant and Matt Smith because they're young, and it's like that's quite a shallow reason to like it too.
Yeah, and I say vice versa. They say, I only watch the Doctors who are like, I don't know, over 40 or something. It's like, just because they're under 40 doesn't mean they aren't good. Like, I mean, David Tennant, Matt Smith, Jodie Whittaker, Peter Davison, they're all, I think, all very good actors in their own right and deliver a take. But yeah, I just think there's a lot of similarities, but I stand by what I said. I think that Deep Breath, in many respects, implemented some of the, like, ideas or concepts the Twin Dilemma was trying to do just a lot better. I still think, though, the Twin Dilemma does deserve its own shine in the spotlight. Like we said, it has redeeming moments. That last scene in particular.
I do think Deep Breath is a better story than the Twin Dilemma.
I agree, absolutely.
It's probably easy to say, though, because Deep Breath's production values are far better. And that's one of the biggest things that it has on its side. But I do still think, even in the writing, I still think that Deep Breath is better. Yeah,
in the story, like, take production out of it. Like, Deep Breath is a better story, I think, like, intrinsically. And they're roughly about the same length, really, maybe Deep Breath's like 10 minutes shorter or something. But I just, if any of your listeners or viewers would take away from this video, I just, like, if any of you haven't seen the Twin Dilemma, or it's been like a long time and you know, again, you just remember the one bad strangling scene, I'd highly recommend giving it another chance. You know, just, you know, obviously you can have your opinion. If you watch it and you don't like it, that's fair enough. But yeah, I just give it a chance. That's all I'll say. That's what I'd want to
I will say
leave
this is
with.
probably not one I'm going to flick on, you know, every now and then. It's
Yeah.
It's not like one that I will go back to very often, but I do think it's an interesting piece of Doctor Who to talk about.
Absolutely.
I think. I thought that in terms of the direction it was by Peter Moffat, I do think out of all the stories he did, this is probably his weakest direction, but I'm not sure if that's his fault. It might just be production value reasons, budgeting, something like that. But I think a lot of his other stories he did, like State of Decay, The Visitation, Mordred Undead, The Five Doctors, and The Two Doctors, all had much better production values and direction.
I guess it's partly because maybe the Twin Dilemma came at the very end of the season, so maybe the budget wasn't...
That does happen.
Well, they probably just ran out,
That does happen sometimes. Especially because they probably blew it all on Caves as well.
Oh god, yeah, absolutely.
And possibly Resurrection too. And like I said, the music by Malcolm Clarke, it was strange, but there was one part I really liked, and that was when he referenced Tegan and they played the music from Resurrection. That was a very, very good moment with the music. Also, I will give one good, interesting piece of trivia.
Yeah.
The character of Hugo, apparently Peter Capaldi was considered to play that role.
Oh, really? See, it's all tying together. I'm telling you.
Crazy.
the links are there, man.
Absolutely. Yes.
Oh, man.
Rightio. Would you like to give a brief conclusion and a rating out of 10 for the Twin Dilemma?
Of course. So, in conclusion, does the Twin Dilemma have flaws? Yes, of course it does. It's not a perfect story. However, it's a piece of Who history that I feel doesn't deserve to be ignored for simply one bad scene. I feel it deserves the time of day. There's a lot of, as we said, there's a lot of interesting concepts. There's a very decent plot as it develops. Asmail is a great character who has a great ending as well. Could there have been more nuance? Yes. More detail? Yes. More focusing on certain things rather than others? Yes. But as it stands, the Twin Dilemma remains a very fun and entertaining story, and for me at least, an interesting and intriguing start to the Sixth Doctor's time on TV. So that's my summation, and you should all give it a chance. And I will give the Twin Dilemma a 7.5 out of 10.
Okay. So the Twin Dilemma obviously has its issues. I think the biggest issue is that it's too on the nose, and it doesn't have enough texture and nuance, and if it did, it would probably be a much better story. But there are still things about it I really like. I really like Colin Baker's performance. I really like some of the things they do with Perry. I like the Time Lord character, especially his ending. I really like the concept that they were playing with. Some of the side characters, like the twins and stuff, were a bit dispensable, and it was a bit wish-washy and a bit sloppy. But I genuinely think with rewrites and with more focus and a better budget, I think the Twin Dilemma could be a really solid story. As it stands, though, I do think, because of its flaws, it does unfortunately suffer under the weight of the flaws, despite the positives. And that climactic scene is what saved it from being a dud, but it only just saves it. So I'm going to give the Twin Dilemma a 5 out of 10.
To be honest, that's more generous than a lot of people would have given it. So. Yeah. Oh, just one more thing, sorry, before we wrap up. If I could recommend anything else as well, read the Target book. It's one of those instances, I think, where a few classic Who stories are like this, where maybe they're not the best represented on TV, but the book really redeems them. I felt this with Warriors of the Deep, which I know is a story you consider a dud. I do feel the book gives it more justice, and I also believe the same is true with the Twin Dilemma. So, if you can for yourself or anyone watching, if you can get your hands on the Twin Dilemma Target book, I would highly recommend giving it a read.
Great. So there is one bit we usually do at the end of these videos, but considering we're short on time, I would say I'm going to ask you to sum it up as quick as possible with maybe 1 or 2 or 3 points. So what we usually do at the end of these videos is we defend a story against Hellbent. However, given that I know you like Hellbent, I have chosen a story that I am pretty confident you like more than Hellbent. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you do. Dark Water and Death in Heaven.
Yeah, I do enjoy that story more than I do Hellbent. Yes.
Right. So very quickly in a
Okay.
minute or two,
Sure.
tell me why you think it's better than Hellbent.
Why Dark Water and Death in Heaven is better than Hellbent.
Yes.
I think it's better because it's a summation of where Series 8 took the 12th Doctor. Again, as we said, the 12th Doctor is unlikable. He's unapproachable. He's rude. I think all of that throughout the season is very well written. It's very well justified. It's a very interesting place to take the character. And this is just a culmination of that where, yes, he still has that abrasiveness, but he also does show that he cares. One of my favourite scenes of all Who is the hallucination scene, where Clara's on the volcano with the TARDIS keys. I think that is a masterclass in acting, full stop, from the pair of them. I think it's a brilliant scene showing this relationship the 12th Doctor and Clara have, and the fact that after all that, he still has that compassion to take her to try and save Danny. And yeah, I could go on forever. But watch Connor's Series 8 video I guessed it on. You'll get a more detailed answer there. But yeah, I just think it works better than Hellbent because I do enjoy Hellbent for the most part, as again we discussed when we talked about Series 9. But it does have its own fair share of problems that, whilst I can sort of look past, I feel Dark Water Death in Heaven feels a lot tighter of a story. And as a finale, it feels like a tighter finale than Hellbent is, if that makes sense. So, yeah, for those reasons, in summary, that is why I believe Dark Water and Death in Heaven is better. It also has Cyberbrig. Hellbent doesn't have Cyberbrig. And I know I've probably annoyed a lot of people saying that, but I'm okay with Cyberbrig. Just, it's fine. So...
Yeah, so people know how I feel about Hellbent, but I will give very briefly 3 reasons why I think Dark Water Death in Heaven's better. Number 1, like you said, it has incredible acting. Not to say that Hellbent doesn't, but I think the acting in Dark Water Death in Heaven, when it is good, it lands better because of the narrative.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing I will give it. Number 2, Michelle Gomez. I already said acting, but Michelle Gomez carries that story. I even think she has some really good moments as the Master, especially the Part 1 cliffhanger. She is one of the things about the story that has grown on me as I've rewatched it, even if there is a lot of things about the story that I don't like. And number 3, for all of the issues I have with Death in Heaven, I think its actual best moments are after the plot ends, and when when Danny Pink chooses to save the kid that he killed. There is that scene where the Doctor and Clara hug each other as they're lying. And my favourite scene in the whole story is the scene where the Doctor is lied to by the Master and assaults the TARDIS.
Yes, yeah, when Gallifrey's not there.
Yeah, because I've said this before, I really, really don't like Death in Heaven as an episode, but the last 5 minutes of it are fucking great.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Yeah.
Dark Water Death in Heaven's weird. It's a story where I love the start of Part 1, I love the end of Part 1, and I love the end of Part 2. And then everything else in between
else
is a giant mess. But there's little bits in there where I'm like, oh yes, that is great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Hellbent, I don't have any of that. So that's my reason. Yeah, thank you for coming on, Adam. It's been great.
Not a problem. It's been a pleasure to chat with you again, and I can't believe I've had to defend the Twin Dilemma once again. I'm sure there will be another time someone will be like, come and do it again.
I'll check out Samuel Davis's video now, because I can do that.
Absolutely. We only really talked about, in that one, we only really went over the first 2 parts, but we do give a lot of thoughts on the later half of the story as well. So yeah, go and check out his video, and yeah, give it 6 months. You'll probably see me popping up somewhere else talking about it again.
Probably.
Yeah, but no, thank you for having me.
Yes, great. Next time on this series, I will be doing Time Lash with Antonio.
Oh, have fun. Again, worst treatment of Perry in any TV story. I guarantee you. So
well, we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, thank you everyone. Goodbye. See you next time.
Bye.